Foundation grant award for Phase 2 of the Climate Ready Boston initiative to be administered by the Boston Environment Department. This is a City Council hearing that is being recorded and broadcast on Comcast Channel 8 and RCN Channel 82. It's also being streamed at cityofboston.gov. We're going to have a brief overview of the issue with Carl Spector, as well as some Q&A. And then if there are any members of the audience that wish to testify, they are more than welcome to do so. Please sign up in the back left hand of this chamber. We ask that all people wishing to testify state their name and affiliation and limit your comments to a few minutes to ensure that all comments and concerns can be heard. So today's hearing, as I said, is on docket number 0248. This is a message and order authorizing the City of Boston Environment Department to accept and expand a grant of $835,000 from the BARR Foundation. The grant would fund a set of community-level resilience strategies recommended by the Green Ribbon Commission to address climate risk. We are joined today, as I said, by the Commissioner of the Environment Department, Carl Spector. Carl, always good to be with you. It's noting that this is actually the third time is the charm for this hearing. We had it scheduled twice before, but some extreme weather events prevented us from having the hearing, and then it was 70 degrees for 3 days last week. So to our friends in Washington who deny that climate change is real, this is just another example of what we are dealing with. So, Carl, can you give us an overview on the grant?
Yes, Councilor O'Malley, thank you for the opportunity to testify today concerning the grant to the City of Boston from the BARR Foundation to support the next phase of Climate Ready Boston. Last November, Mayor Walsh released the Climate Ready Boston report. This report provided updated projections of sea level rise, increasing temperature, and more precipitation for Boston. It assessed in more detail and more comprehensively than ever before the potential damage to community, health, and property that those changes could cause. And most importantly, it laid out a wide range of initiatives to further prepare Boston so that our city remains safe and thriving throughout the century. This work was supported by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the Green Ribbon Commission, including the BARR Foundation, and advised by many partners throughout the city. The City of Boston, in partnership with the Boston Planning and Development Agency, the Boston Water and Sewer Commission, and many others, is now working hard on implementation. In December, I discussed with you grants that we received from the Commonwealth and the BARR Foundation that are funding more detailed planning for the protection of East Boston and Charlestown. The new grant from the BARR Foundation will allow us to expand our implementation activities. This will include further work on preparation for sea level rise and increased coastal flooding, as well as measures to address the risks of heat waves and inland flooding from stormwater. This will include green and gray infrastructure and changes to codes and policies. A major component of all our work will be increased education for and engagement with all sectors of the Boston community. The 2-year grant that we are receiving from the BARR Foundation has two components. The first is an outright grant of $435,000. The second is a challenge grant of $400,000 for the second year. To obtain the second installment, the city will have to raise $573,000 from internal or external resources. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Carl. And this is obviously a no-brainer, but just for my own edification. So this will support the efforts that have already begun as we talk about really looking at sort of the coastal plains at East Boston and Charlestown.
Well, no, the previous grant that we discussed a few months ago is supporting work in East Boston and Charlestown. And we want to bring that kind of neighborhood-level planning to other parts of the city. Oh, fantastic. Okay. And we are now working with our partners in the BPDA and other agencies to discuss where it is most effective to turn our attention to.
So I would assume that some of the neighborhoods that are on the water, such as South Boston or the North End, may be prime candidates to look at this for flooding.
They are certainly good candidates. We are certainly looking at the most vulnerable areas identified by the report in December, certainly along the water. But that said, we also want to make sure we're, in our overall effort, giving attention to heat waves and inland flooding too. So we're trying to balance all those different risks and the way they affect different neighborhoods.
Sure. So, and it makes sense to, I love the term green and gray infrastructure because we're talking about either using sort of concrete buffer zones or natural hills and whatnot to address the flooding. But What are some of the things we could do to address heat waves or sort of prolonged exposure to heat? Is there?
Well, we certainly want to look at more green infrastructure to, more planting of trees and other, green infrastructure to help keep parts of the city cool. We want to make sure that our emergency shelters for heat emergencies are operating properly and the system is working properly. We're looking at energy supply because we are concerned that higher temperatures will cause increased stress on the electrical grid. So are there measures that we can do to make different parts of the city less vulnerable to that? For example, as I think we may have discussed before, the city is now working on putting photovoltaics plus battery storage on 4 of our community centers. This is funded by a grant from the Commonwealth. And with that battery storage, that gives us increased resilience in the event of a power outage. And we'll have it again with the solar power and battery. That means we have power, but we're also not relying on diesel generators, which certainly have a place in our emergency response system.
And
but
those are for emergency personnel, communication equipment, memory serves.
Well,
Or that's part
we're
of
hoping
it.
it will support the critical equipment in the emergencies, the cooling centers.
Okay.
And, it has to be configured, of course, depending on the specific demand of that center and the amount of PV and storage that can be installed there. So
understood. And what's the status on that? Because I know we had a hearing on that probably 2+ years ago at this point.
It's ongoing. These were pilot projects. That's why they were funded by the state. And as often happens with pilot projects, unforeseen problems arise and how to structure it both in terms administratively and technically, and the costs involved. So we're working very hard on it. We're hopeful that it will. We've been doing a lot of planning with our partners in the Public Facilities Division and BCYF, and
understood.
I'm happy to get you a more detailed
Well,
update.
I look forward to the ribbon cutting
point,
of those because I know one of the centers is Curtis Hall and Jamaica Plain, so I look forward to
exactly
spending time with you in our neighborhood.
Yes,
to
we're
cut the ribbon.
we think it will be very exciting when we actually get them up, but it's been a longer process than we imagined, but we are still working very hard on it.
Glad to hear it, Carl. So then it's will the money be used to fund any positions or just support the work that's happening?
We actually are working on an RFP right now to hire a consultant team that will help us with the planning, and we're having our internal consultations to finalize the scope of work. I'm hopeful that RFP will be out in the next month or so, and we'll be happy to share that with you as soon as it's out.
Great. So the money will be used to support a consulting team and then actually pay for the expanded trees, pay for the studies, pay for the perhaps some of the green and gray infrastructure.
Actually, and let me correct myself. So because of so it's a large grant with lots of different pieces.
Fair enough.
We actually are going to use the grant to extend one position that we currently have. We have a climate preparedness fellow who has been funded by a BARR Foundation grant for the past year and a half. And one component of this grant will be to extend that position.
Okay.
So, if you will allow that correction, most of it will be used to hire a consultant team to help us with the detailed planning and analysis that will be required to look at a couple more neighborhoods. If we're successful in raising the additional money and obtaining the second-year grant, then we'll have obviously even more money to broaden the scope even farther. To look at more neighborhoods and more more risks.
But will let's assume that you're able to raise so you have to for the second part of the grant, you have to raise $573,000 to receive that $400,000.
Correct.
And is that through fundraising? Is that through internal budgeting? How do we do that?
We are looking at all possible sources right now. So,
but just in the past, I'm sure there have been similar requirements with grants you've received. How is that done?
Yes, but this is nothing that has required us to raise quite as much money as this has relative to the size of the grant that we're receiving. The original discussion that we had with the BARR Foundation was actually looking at us to raise a lot more, but the grant that we've already received in the past year from the Office of Coastal Zone Management, again, which we discussed a few months ago, the BARR Foundation credited that as part of our fundraising effort and lowered the original amount that they were going to require us to raise to get the second installment. So that's why it has come down.
Sure. Well,
the way to $573,000.
What was it originally? Was it $1 million?
No, 800,000.
Okay.
800,000, and we received about $227,000 from the Office of Coastal Zone Management, and that has again, they have recognized the work that we did to receive that funding.
Good.
So we will continue to look for opportunities with the Commonwealth or the federal government as they come up, and I'm certainly discussing this with my colleagues in the administration, given that we are in budget season, and we don't have any resolution of that. But and
how long?
And as you know, how difficult those conversations can be.
How long do we have to raise? Is there a timeline on it?
December, until December.
December of 2017 this year.
Correct.
What happens if we don't raise it? Do we not receive that $400K?
That's correct.
Okay.
If we raise part of it, and we're looking for other opportunities, again, not just other government, but other foundations. We would certainly talk with our friends at the BARR Foundation, but at the moment, the conditions are that this is how much we need to raise, and if we raise all of that,
okay,
we would get the second component.
So let's assume we do, because I have the utmost faith in you and your leadership, Carl. Let's assume we raise the 573.
Well, I'm hoping you'll give me some help with that.
Other grants, absolutely, for something as important in this. So let's assume that we are able to recoup approximately $835,000 in external funding. We will extend either way, we will extend one position, the Climate Preparedness Fellow. We will be able to hire a consulting team to focus on more neighborhoods other than sort of where the focus has begun in Charlestown and East Boston. And then even expand. So phase one, for lack of a better word, or phase two, I would say, is sort of expanding. And then phase three, next year, would be expanding it even farther.
That's correct.
And I would assume that every neighborhood in Boston could benefit from some level of study and forward thinking of how to address issues around climate change.
And certainly some of the work that we're going to be doing in the specific neighborhoods will be expandable. For example, if we're looking at the zoning and sea level rise related zoning for one neighborhood, it's, as you know, it's often helpful to think about one neighborhood intensively, and then you can take the lessons from that neighborhood and expand it to all parts of the city, all the neighborhoods that may be affected by sea level rise and coastal flooding. And similarly, if we develop useful solutions for green infrastructure and ways to reduce the heat waves and temperature problems in one part of the city, those are applicable to other parts of the city too. So it's very important that we all recognize that even though we're starting in certain neighborhoods, most of the lessons that we expect to get will be applicable to other parts of the city.
Certainly.
And again, it is certainly the mayor's intention to to bring the work that we're doing to bear on all parts of the city and looking at the differing risks that those neighborhoods face.
Sure. Terrific. So, and just to be clear, none of this money will go towards actually purchasing more trees or purchasing white topping for roofs or purchasing, more PV paneling. This is just for the consultant team and sort of building the plan and the audit going forward.
Yeah, I'm always reluctant to say absolutely none, especially since we're planning out for 2 years. But the major component is to look at more detailed planning, more specific implementable plans for all the various.
Great. And then finally, have you been sort of monitoring, I think it's now 4 years ago, this body passed the Boston Energy Reporting and Disclosure Ordinance. I know you played a role in the passage of that, something that I was very, very proud to support former Mayor Menino on. Have you seen any tangible benefits 4 years out in terms of either addressing already constructed buildings or looking at new buildings that have allowed us to build sort of smarter, greener, more environmentally friendly, and therefore contributing to less issues of climate change?
Well, Councilor, as you know, the BERDO, the Building Energy Reporting and Disclosure Ordinance, is one piece of a much larger program, and it's hard to pull out anything specific, and because obviously we have the Green Building Zoning Code, we have our incentive programs through the utilities and all the work that we're doing on education and working with our partners in the development community and in institutions. So it's hard to pick out one piece. I can say that this year we're going into our 4th and final year of the rollout of BERDO, so that this year the new group that will start reporting are residential buildings between 35,000 and 50,000 square feet. Before it only went down to 50,000 square feet. So with this year, all buildings greater than 35,000 square feet will be reporting their energy and water use to the city. I noticed last year that the pace of reports was much faster, that reports were coming in February and March rather than in April and up to the May 15th deadline. So, that we certainly see that the development community and the facility management community has integrated this into the work that they're doing, and they understand the importance of it. And the compliance rates continue to edge up, even as we're adding smaller buildings, who have tend to have smaller staff and less specialized staff. So we're getting more buildings in, and the compliance rate keeps edging up. So that's all a good sign that the building community, the real estate community, has accepted this and is working with us. And we know that there are more and more wonderful examples of existing buildings doing retrofits and making the buildings more efficient, and we see that also in some exemplary new buildings that are coming up too. So it's a very heartening. Still a long way to go, and
Indeed.
We appreciate all the support that you've given us over the years in this effort.
No, happy to help. Well, Carl, I appreciate, as always, spending a little bit of time with you. Obviously, I will urge my colleagues to pass this post-haste at hopefully as early as Wednesday's meeting. But if not, we'll get it soon. And just wanted to thank you for your great work and leadership. I don't believe anyone here would like to testify. So seeing no takers, I will adjourn the hearing of the City Council's Environment and Sustainability hearing on docket number 0248. I'll urge my colleagues to pass this on Wednesday. Thanks again. This hearing is hereby adjourned.